You know, one thing that really bothers me about the modern day music industry and honestly the internet as a whole is how safe a lot of artists play it nowadays. I mean, you have people who come out of the gate as the most disrespectful motherfucker on the planet, talking shit about everybody and saying whatever's on their mind, no matter how unpopular it is. And then all of a sudden they get a little bit of attention, a little bit of clout, and some money in their pocket, and they start moving like a choir boy. And the reason for that is because they're afraid that if they burn the wrong bridge, they're gonna lose everything that they worked for over the past couple years in only a day. And I'm not even talking about some dumb shit like getting canceled, because at this point I don't even fully believe that that's a real thing that can happen unless you do some very, very heinous shit, and even then people often forget about it in only a couple years time. I'm more so talking about appeasing your label overlords, because once you sign a deal you no longer have full control over your music or really even your persona. The label's gonna want to sell you as a product, and they're gonna want to market you as the most wide appealing artist they possibly can, without even realizing that that's going to lose you the main appeal that you had in the first place, because after all, people only tuned in to see what type of wild shit you were going to say, and now that you're not saying anything, why would people care about your music? I mean, imagine if Tekashi 69 signed a deal back in the day in like mid 2018, and then all of a sudden he stopped talking shit altogether and started preaching some sort of positive message. I'm sorry, but I don't think people would be down for that. But unfortunately, we see this type of thing happen over and over again, and honestly it goes even deeper than simply signing to a label, because many artists will do that to themselves. Basically, as soon as they get a little bit of backlash and people start talking badly about them online, they can't handle it and immediately backpedal, which is basically the worst type of human being that you can possibly be, if you can dish it out but can't take it. And I know what you're probably thinking. You're gonna bring up examples of people like Tom McDonald or Stitches. I mean, they say whatever's on their mind. They don't let the woke mob stop them, but they're grifters. They're only saying that type of stuff because it's popular with a certain audience. They're not actually saying what they feel. They don't actually mean the things that they say. And in my opinion, that's just as bad as not saying anything at all. But that's why the topic of today's video is so important, because RXK Nephew is one of those rare artists who truly says whatever he wants, and because of that, he's only got more popular. Now, you may have never heard of this guy before, but once you hear his music, I promise you you're never gonna forget it, because it sounds like nothing else you've ever heard in the music industry. He does get compared quite a bit to Lil B, but honestly, in my opinion, it's a completely different thing. It definitely does pull some influence from Lil B, as all music does, let's be honest. Thank you, Bass God. But he definitely does his own thing with it. I mean, how many artists out there do you know that make 8-minute long songs talking about the metaphysical reality of life and the concept of, well, being alive in the first place, existence, Jesus Christ, before he then goes on to diss Lil Durk and say that Lil Reese shit his pants, before then going on to loop the beat and talk about how much he loves Hennessy? That little rant that I just went on is really what it's like to listen to an RXK Nephew song, except it actually sounds good and he doesn't have a speech impediment like me. And if that doesn't sound appealing, well, give it a chance, because not only is his music very out there and extremely creative, but his story is also very entertaining and honestly a lot deeper than you would think. Just like Acid Soulja, people want to write him off as nothing more than a meme rapper, but honestly at this point the meme rappers seem like they have more interesting lore than 90% of the real rappers in the music industry. So once again, I'm gonna tell that lore. So without further ado, I give you the story of RXK Nephew. And real quick, if you're fucking with the video and enjoying it, why not subscribe to the channel? I'm trying to get to 40K in the next couple months, and anybody who can help me with that would truly be appreciated. But with that said, let's get right into it. Christopher Kevin Williams was born February 1st, 1995 in Rochester, New York, a pretty large city in the northern part of the state that's not all that far away from Niagara Falls. Well, the shitty American version of Niagara Falls, because the Canadian one is better. Sorry, but not sorry. With Rochester actually having the fourth biggest population in the state outside of New York City, and because of that, it's a pretty affluent place to grow up, with many different cultures all cohabitating the same place. However, the city definitely has its fair share of problems, as oftentimes New York City will take some of its most dangerous offenders and ship them up north to serve their time in Rochester, and then after they're done and they get out, they have absolutely no way to get back to New York City, so they simply continue to reoffend in Rochester, making it a more dangerous place to live. live. Well, at least when it comes to certain neighborhoods, but unfortunately for Nephew, he would find himself smack dab in the middle of one of those, as unfortunately right from his birth, he was already in a pretty rough spot, with his mother having him at the age of 17 and his father not being in the picture for very long after that, leaving her very few resources to be able to raise a child, and unfortunately, he would have to be given to his grandmother to take care of. And in fact, his grandmother would actually take in many of his cousins and other family members as well, because she didn't want any of her grandchildren to have to go into the foster care system. And while that's a very nice thing to do, and she's a very kind and loving woman who would always take care of him, make sure he had food on his plate and clothes on his back, having that many people coming in and out of the household at all times was not only very chaotic, but put a lot of strain on her financially, meaning that she was under a lot of stress all throughout the time that Nephew was growing up, which of course made him feel a little bit guilty. Although it's not like his mother wasn't around at all, as she would go to see him on a pretty regular basis, although they had more of a brother and sister type of relationship as opposed to a mother and son one, with her often telling him details about her life that no kid really needs to hear. On top of that, the house was also very loud, with his uncle and aunt often coming over, drinking, partying, singing, and smoking crack all night from basically sundown to sun up, meaning it was very hard for him to sleep and actually be rested to go to school the next day, which is actually kind of surprising because despite the crack smoking, his grandmother was actually pretty strict, being a devout Jehovah's Witness, and because of that, they never celebrated holidays, meaning no Christmas, no Easter, and well, basically no gifts. But if there was one plus side to being kept up all night by his family partying, it's that it gave him a love for music at a very young age, with him often listening to blues and being put on to artists like Marvin Gaye by his grandmother and Biggie and Tupac by his mother. In fact, she would even tell him that she wished that Biggie was his real father, which is kind of crazy to say considering the fact that he passed away when Nephew was like 2 years old, meaning you would have been a widow. But I mean, I guess he would have inherited a lot of money, so it would have been a bit of a better situation, maybe? I don't know, but I definitely think he got his shit-talking nature from his mother, because she would often tell him that she was the real Big Kim and that Little Kim was an ugly transvestite who was the female version of Flava Flav, which is crazy to say, but I mean, damn. But anyways, getting back to his love of music, despite the fact that he would very rarely ever be given gifts on holidays because they didn't celebrate them, his grandmother would give him a small piano, which he would often play with, as well as a karaoke machine, which he would use to rip the instrumentals off his grandmother's CDs and then rap over, which was how he got his start in the world of making music. However, when he wasn't making music, he was often outside playing with the neighborhood kids, climbing trees, doing backflips, and sword fighting with different pieces of wood that they found around the area, with him quickly gaining a reputation for being one of the most fun kids to play with in the entire neighborhood, because he always had more creative ideas than everybody else and would often come up with games that nobody else could think of. He would also say that he was diagnosed with ADHD at a very young age, which from personal experience makes you a really cool kid when you're younger, but as you get older, you have a lot harder of a time paying attention, and then people start to find you annoying. But Nephew was always comfortable in his own skin, and he was willing to try anything that people want to do, including playing sports as well as video games. Now, of course, with his family being pretty poor, he was never able to get his own video game console, although he would often go over to his friend's house and play their N64s, with him playing stuff like GoldenEye, Mario Kart 64, and WWE, with him being very competitive at it and always wanting to win. However, when he played stuff like football and soccer, it was the exact opposite. He definitely did want to win, but he was way too unfocused to really pay attention to what they were doing, and every time that he was picked for a team, he would often make them lose. And that's not me talking shit about him, he actually self-admitted that. And honestly, I mean, who gives a fuck if you lose some random football game that you're playing with your friends in the neighborhood? It doesn't affect your life in any way, and as long as you're having fun, well, then continue to do it. Although there was one incident when he was in elementary school that definitely wasn't all that fun, where a 6'3" kid would end up jumping over him, knocking him down, and then stepping on his neck and face, which of course left him in pretty rough shape, but as soon as he looked up, the kid was actually smiling, feeling like he did a good job. So the next day he would come back with like 10 of his friends and threaten to beat him up, although he would end up backing down on that because, well, it wasn't all that serious. Although he still wants to run the fade with that kid even to this day. There was also another incident after that that where he was riding BMX with his friends and he ended up taking a jump way too fast and way too hard, and when he came down he almost impaled himself with the bike handles. Sounds pretty fucked up, but I mean that was kind of par for the course back in the early 2000s and late 90s. And he lived to tell the story, so obviously it wasn't all that bad. However, as he grew older and older, he would start to become a lot more rebellious, with him often questioning his grandmother's faith, as well as not listening to anybody except his grandmother. His mother would try to be more hands-on with raising him around the age of 12, although at that point it was a little bit too late and he didn't want to hear anything she had to say. He would start to get into a lot more fights. He started smoking weed and drinking alcohol. He would steal from stores whenever he saw something that he wanted but couldn't buy. It was all petty stuff at first, but it would eventually grow into a broader pattern that would get him into trouble later on. But despite him being a pretty troubled kid, he did kind of well in school. I mean, he didn't do super good on his assignments and wasn't really able to pay attention in class, but his teachers would point him out as one of the more intelligent kids who often asked questions that others wouldn't. He was always curious about his surroundings. He always wanted to know why things were the way they were, and that type of mindset takes people far in life. Although unfortunately, he was never really able to capitalize on it. When he was only in the 7th grade, he would end up getting into trouble with the law for the very first time, and he ended up getting sent to juvenile prison. And after that, he was basically in and out throughout the rest of his childhood and never ended up returning to school, leaving him with only a grade 7 education. And this pattern would continue all throughout his childhood and teen years until he found himself in big trouble at the age of 17, with him getting hit with both a kidnapping charge as well as a robbery charge. Now, the cop's story is that he ended up stealing a car and pointed a gun at a couple's face with a child in the back seat. His story is that he didn't do that and that he did nothing wrong, but unfortunately he would get taken in and questioned by the police. And they would give him one of two options: either rat out his homie who he was there with that night, or they were going to bring an entire case down on him. And he wasn't going to go to juvenile this time, he was going to go to big boy prison. However, both his grandmother and mother would tell him from a young age that snitching was wrong, and because of that he wouldn't tell, thinking that he would be able to get away with it until he ended up standing in a police line and being pointed out by the accuser, and after that he couldn't really fight it anymore. He would end up staying in county prison for about a year's time while he tried to fight the case, until eventually he gave up and took a plea deal, basically saying that they would drop the kidnapping charge if he admitted to robbery, giving him 4 years in prison and 2 years of probation. Now that's a long time to go away, but considering the fact that a kidnapping charge can get you like 20 years in prison, he definitely made the right choice, although he would get some news right before he went in that would forever change his life, with his at the time girlfriend telling him that she was pregnant with his child and that when he got out he was going to have to straighten his life up and provide for their child, which he would agree to, although he was going away for a long time, and considering the fact that 4 years would go by very slow if he didn't keep himself entertained, he would do everything he could to make his own fun. And of course we're talking some very wholesome stuff like reading books and working out, while also instigating a bunch of fights and getting people to beat the shit out of each other in front of him, smoking K2, drinking prison wine, and eventually managing to get people to smuggle drugs into the prison for him, which he would not only do himself but also sell to other inmates, which basically assured his safety because nobody wanted to beat up or kill the guy who was bringing drugs in. And on top of that, it also made sure he had a lot of money and his commissary was always full, with many gang members in the prison actually protecting him, although he never became a full-on member himself because in his own words, every gang member that he ever knew was broke and he didn't want that for himself. He also made sure to make friends with many of the guards, which was definitely a good idea because apparently they were pushing a lot of inmates down the stairs and then claiming they had a heart attack from smoking K2, although they were definitely just straight up murdering those guys, so probably a good idea to be friends with them so you don't accidentally slip and fall down like 14 flights of stairs. That would be really bad. Anyways though, during the time that he was locked up, he wouldn't lose his love for music, with him listening to artists like Juicy J, Gucci Mane, and of course Max B, with his most played albums being the Gucci Mane and Future collab tape as well as Rubber Band Business by Juicy J. He also had a Max B tape, but he never said the name of it, although that was his favorite rapper of all time and eventually became his inspiration to start rapping once he got out of prison. Now he actually was dropping music before he ever got locked up back in like 2011 under the name of Briscoe Slice, although this music never really did all that well, and during the entire 4 years that he was locked up it only got a total of 300 views, so it really isn't all that important in the grand scheme of his career. However, I will show you one song from that era so you can kind of get a feel of what his music sounded like when he first started. It was a lot more serious and a lot less jokey than his later stuff, with him obviously trying to put on kind of a gangster persona. Not bad by any means, but definitely not anything that stands out all that much. But hey, that's why he eventually came out and completely switched it up. Oh yeah, and one time he also bought a little Dirk CD from commissary, and it was so bad that he actually got in an argument with the prison and wanted to return it. But, well, that only inspired him even more to make better music. Anyways, eventually all of this time locked up would come to an end, with him finally getting out sometime between late 2015 and early 2016, with him actually going to a homeless shelter to live out the rest of his parole, although he was able to wiggle out of that by telling his parole officer that there was somebody at the shelter who he had beef with. He basically told him, if you send me there, I'm gonna kill that guy. The parole officer said, I never seen anybody get killed there before, and he told him, well, this is going to be the first time. Now that story was completely made up, but it would end up working, and after that he was able to parole at his baby mother's house, with him going back and forth between there and different group homes. And it was right around that time that he would come across an old friend who actually had a home studio and would let him go over and record music whenever he wanted, with him returning to the Briscoe Slice name and once again dropping music on Bandcamp, as well as creating his own Instagram to promote his music, with him having big dreams of eventually making enough money off of rap that he would be able to hit the freeway in his car and go wherever he wanted, not even looking at a GPS or maps or signs or anything like that, simply letting the road take him wherever it wanted to take him. Different city every day, different thing every day. It was truly the American dream. But considering the fact that he was not only on parole and couldn't leave New York, but also was broke as fuck, so he would instead settle for selling crack from sun up to sundown, which would make him a lot of money, but at the same time, it left him with a lot of free time, as after all, he was basically sitting around at the crib watching TV and waiting for a junkie to call for his fix, and that would leave him a bunch of time in between where he could do whatever he wanted, and that's when he would really start to take music more seriously. This is when he ended up buying his own home studio, which was basically a crappy laptop and a USB microphone, although that's all he really needed at the time to make the music that he wanted to make, and he would continue to drop stuff on Bandcamp and SoundCloud all throughout the year. With him eventually discovering Little B through the altercation that he had with PNB Rock and a Boogie, where they ended up jumping him at Rolling Loud and stole his laptop. And when Nephew heard about that, he was so pissed off, putting himself in Little B's shoes and wanting to get revenge on both a Boogie and PNB if he ever ran across them. And that's all it would take to get him on the based movement. And honestly, I fuck with PNB Rock, I fuck with the Boogie, I listen to their music a lot, but for real, how are you gonna attack the bass god? That's like trying to attack Jesus or something. It's just wrong. It just feels dirty. However, it wasn't just him discovering Little B that would set him off in the world of music. It was also him forming another connection with somebody that he knew from childhood, going by the name of Little Fleechy. Now, Fleechy and Nephew actually knew each other from a young age, but according to Nephew, they were never really friends because they came from rival blocks. And while Nephew wasn't a gang member himself, he was pretty tapped in with several different gang members, meaning that he would never really hang out with the ops. But Fleechy, on the other hand, would say that he actually was close friends with Nephew from a young age, and they would often rob people together at the age of 12 and 13. So I'm not really sure who you can believe here, although as we go on, you're going to start to see that Fleechy is a bit of an unreliable narrator. Also, if you haven't guessed it already, Little Fleechy is the artist who would later go on to be known as RXK Poppy, and the timeline of these two meeting is pretty confused, but I think I've figured it out. Now, according to Nephew, he would first meet Poppy all the way back in 2016 through a mutual friend going by the name of RX Slither Her, although at the time, I don't think she was running with the RX name.
I met you through Slither Her, nigga.
Many people will say that RX Poppy ended up meeting Nephew after he got back from Atlanta, but when you really look at the timeline and the different statements that both him and his friends have made, it more so seems that they ended up going to Atlanta around 2019 when they were already friends. Okay, so keep in mind this video is still about Nephew, and I don't want to derail the entire thing by talking too much about Poppy, as he's gonna get his own video in the very near future. However, I feel like it's very important to describe his come up so you can understand the entire RX branding and drug rich and how it all came together and eventually fell apart. Now, just like Nephew, Poppy was also born in 1995, and he would go on to say in an interview that he was arrested for the first time at 19 years old for a drug charge. And if you do the math, 1995 plus 19 brings you to 2014. Now, he wouldn't stay locked up all that long for this drug charge, as he was actually able to bond out while his trial was taking place, although only a week after he got out, he would then get shot several times in the back. Okay, real quick, I'm recording this part while I'm in the editing process because I know people are going to bring this up if I don't mention it. Because in 2022, Poppy ended up doing a written interview where he went a little bit more in depth about everything that happened to him prior to getting shot. Now, apparently he was actually arrested for the very first time when he was 13 years old because him and his buddy wanted to rob a guy, but when they pulled up on him, he was actually with a girl. They didn't expect her to be there, and because of that, it fucked up the entire thing, and he would end up getting arrested, tried, and then put in juvenile detention until he was about 14 years old. Now, that's not really all that relevant to the story I'm trying to tell. However, it's also important to mention that he claims he was actually stabbed when he was 19 years old. Apparently, him and his buddy were walking down the street. Some guy ran into them. It led to an altercation and a fight where the guy would end up stabbing Poppy in the lip and chest. And apparently, only a couple weeks before that happened, he actually ended up getting caught up with the cops again because he was speeding, and he ended up in a car accident, which he then tried to flee but wasn't able to get away. He's never really mentioned how much trouble he got into for doing that. However, I gotta assume that they probably let him go. But the only reason that I bring all of that up is because he said that he got arrested and shot in October, but doesn't say what year it happened. So I'm assuming that it was 2014, considering the sentence that he got for that crime. He apparently got 21 months for that entire altercation, and if he got arrested in October 2015, he wouldn't be free in time to meet Nephew in 2016.
I met that nigga 2016.
So this had to go down in 2014. I see a lot of people saying that it happened in 2015, but like I said, the timeline won't line up if that was the case. Also, a lot of people say that he got shot in a home invasion. That happened later on. That wasn't the shooting that supposedly left him paralyzed with a permanent limp for the rest of his life. In 2023, Poppy would go on a live stream and explain how he got shot, and apparently the way it went down is that he robbed somebody, stole a bunch of drugs from them, and then he went to a party and started handing it out to random people. One of the guys that he gave the drugs to actually knew the guy that got robbed, so he pulled up to the party, they got into an altercation, and then he got shot, and supposedly he killed the guy who shot at him. That's what he said on live stream. I don't know if you can believe that, but it's his own words.
So long story short, the beef between the hood get deaded right then and there that night. In the same night, our homegirl from the hood, she just graduated high school, so she throwing a party. Rewind, right? The day before I got shot, that morning, I had robbed a nigga for like 2 pounds of weed and maybe like 100 grams of Molly. Now we at the party. I got all the Molly on me that I robbed the nigga for, capsuled up and shit. So I'm just giving everybody free Molly in the party. I don't sell Molly. That ain't my thing. I'm not into that. The ops is in the party. I don't know this. I don't know that the ops is in the party. One of my mans come up to me and he say, hey, cuz you giving, free drugs to them niggas, right? Long story short, some nigga in the party end up getting too drunk. He get wild drunk, so they kick him out. They like, Killer finna fight. I go outside. I'm so high up, I forgot that my gun's still in the car. I just push Killer out the way and I knock the nigga he talking to, I knock him out. Then I see him up top. I got shot, he died, that's it.
Anyways, now that we got the timeline cleared up, let's get back to it.
Now, according to him, one of these bullets actually ended up grazing his spinal cord, and because of that, he would have to be taken to the hospital and was unable to move his feet for a couple days after the fact. Although only after 11 days, he was able to check himself out of the hospital and then would teach himself how to walk again by going around his neighborhood, basically. And if you know anything about spinal cord injuries, you know that that's basically impossible. If something actually grazes your spinal cord, it's going to be swollen for at least 2 weeks after the fact. And once that finally goes down, there's no real guarantee that you're going to be able to walk the same way that you did before. According to him, he had a limp, but I mean, once again, if you get hit that badly, especially with a bullet, you're going to have major damage, and it's going to take several months of rehab to be able to get back on your feet again. You can't simply do it by just walking around.
I was out in 6 days. I had to learn how to walk again. I was on a walker and all that, nigga. I had to do physical therapy and learn how to walk. It took me 4.5 days to learn how to walk as a grown man again. And my walk, I wasn't a regular walk. Nah, I had a crazy limp. Like I couldn't really keep that good balance with my leg. all type of shit.
I know we all watched a lot of Breaking Bad and we saw Hank Schrader go from being bedridden to going back to walking around and being a full-on cop, but let me tell you, that's TV. That doesn't happen in real life. It's very, very rare that people are able to go back to complete normal after sustaining a spinal cord injury, and I just don't believe it, I'm not gonna lie. But either way, getting shot several times, which did actually happen, there's pictures of it, is definitely gonna affect you in a pretty big way, and because of that, he wasn't all that focused on his pending case and ended up skipping out on court. And because of that, they put out a warrant for his arrest. Now, I'm not really sure how exactly long he was out on the run. He would mention in an interview in 2018 that he skipped out on a warrant for about a year's time, but once again, the timeline doesn't really fit together if that's the case.
Is this your first time talking to the people since you came back home?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I've been on this shit. So I really can't I don't really be going nowhere like that. I came on March 14th.
Okay.
Yeah, I came on March 14th. Before I even go to jail, mind you, I was on the run for about a good year before I even got locked up.
As he would say that he got locked up for 21 months, which would bring us to late 2015. Now, I'm not sure if he got locked up in Atlanta. He would mention walking around his own hood in New York to learn how to walk again, so I'm assuming that he was in New York, but maybe he was in Atlanta during the time that he was locked up. But either way, he wasn't drug rich at the time, which is where the entire RX branding comes from. Basically, there's a gang in Atlanta known as Hood Rich. One of the biggest artists from that group is known as Hood Rich Pablo Juan, who would end up having an issue with another guy in that group going by the name of RX Hector. After that, they would then break off and create their own gang known as Drug Rich. Now, they would gain a lot of infamy for breaking into celebrities' houses and stealing all their shit, which was definitely a very ballsy thing to do, as after all, that's gonna get you a pretty high profile. But anyways, we'll get back to all of that in a minute. The main point that I'm trying to make is that whether he was in Atlanta or New York, Poppy would end up coming across Nephew in 2016, and the two of them would start rapping together pretty seriously. Nephew would start dropping music videos on a channel known as EP Films, with him dropping a song called PJs in May, as well as another one in August called Win. After that, though, he would stop working with the channel, with him later going on to explain in an interview was because the guy who ran the channel had a very different outlook when it came to music, only wanting to drop a music video a couple times a month, whereas Nephew wanted to drop music non-stop and basically wanted to have a music video out every other week.
I'm not gonna hold you. When I first found you, or when I first seen you, you definitely was on the Enterprise channel. You definitely was bumping a lot of EP, rocking with a lot of EP.
You know that nigga Enterprise in bags, man. He's a good dude, man. He's a good guy, man. You understand? But he gotta get his mind right, get focused, man. You heard? You understand, man? There's a difference between this shit, man. Between a man and a boy, you heard? That nigga's a boy, you heard? I'm a grown ass man. Don't play with me, boy. You come to your mama house, nigga. Word to my mama, nigga. What you talking about?
This would eventually lead to Nephew calling him a lazy bum, and then the two of them ended up falling out. Now, neither of them are really wrong in this situation, it's just a different outlook on making music, but I definitely lean a lot more towards Nephew's side, as after all, the channel only had like 300 subscribers, and they were starting to gain some attention for putting out music videos, so why not do it every day? You got nothing else to do besides play 2K with your girl and smoke weed, you might as well go out, go on the block, and make some money. As Rob Vicious once said, make some money doing something, put the pipe down. And that's what Nephew was doing. He was basically recording music every single chance that he could get. When he was at his mom's house, he was recording. When he was at his auntie's house, he was recording. When he was outside a crackhead's house trying to serve them crack, he was still recording. And of course, that would lead to wind and dog barks and a bunch of outside sound being picked up by the mic, but he didn't care. He would simply put an effect on it and keep it moving. And after receiving his very first check from DistroKid for a project that he put out prior to 2017, which netted him an entire $40, he immediately stopped trapping. He realized that music could make him money, and if he could make $40, he could make $40K. Now, around mid-2017, Nephew would end up putting out a music video for his track Auntie Lip Lock, which was released on a channel called Jugging Films, which also housed music videos for artists like RXK as well as Drug Rich Mario. Now, is it possible that the two of them connected them to the wider RX gang? I'm not really sure. There's no real proof of that, but it is kind of interesting that they were all kind of inhabiting that same spot.
I'm a person I get compared to all the time, and like sometimes I can see it, sometimes I don't. But Hood Rich Pablo Juan, I listen to I listen to a lot of Hood Rich Pablo Juan.
Yeah, that's my boy. I fuck with.
Yeah, like I listen to Drug Rich Hack, drug rich pesos, drug rich honcho. So like, I get compared to them because like, you feel me? I listen to their shit. So they should be like, they be having a big influence on my shit.
After that, in late 2017, they would go on to do an interview on a channel called Corey Trappin', where they were still going by their old rap names and hadn't yet taken on the Drug Rich or RX branding. Soon after that, in early 2018, Poppy ends up catching another robbery charge, although he doesn't get all that much time in prison and instead is put on house arrest. Although apparently during said house arrest, he would end up in a violent altercation where some people would pull up to his house and try to shoot him. During that altercation, he would end up pulling out his own gun and firing back, which of course would break the rules of his house arrest, as a felon isn't allowed to have a firearm. Now, Poppy would go on to say that he was actually in trouble for another robbery. Like, he basically did a robbery, got put on house arrest, and then immediately did another one, and that's why he got in trouble, although he didn't end up going to prison for that and was still placed back on house arrest. And while at the time the reason for that wasn't really known, it would later come out when an artist going by the name of RX Hector would post a video basically exposing RX Poppy's paperwork, showing that he did tell on the people who shot at him, and because of that, he got a lighter sentence. There was also another guy at the time going by the name of Lazo that apparently Poppy was cool with for a period of time, although after all of this went down, he would go on to say that Poppy was a snitch, with the two of them firing diss tracks at each other. Poppy would also end up putting out a snippet where he said, "Who cares if I'm a snitch?" although he would end up taking that down because it was pretty poorly received. However, at the time, the snitch allegations weren't all that widespread, and he was able to get off of house arrest in early 2019, with him linking up with another guy from Atlanta going by the name of RX Peso. Now, if you're wondering where I got this information from, there's a producer going by the name of RX Brainstorm who ended up doing a Reddit AMA where he would talk about his own come up and how exactly he became RXK Nephew's main producer, with him basically saying he was a small-time producer in Atlanta. Eventually, he was able to get connected to RX Peso. He started working for him for free, and then eventually RX Poppy and Nephew would come into the equation in 2019. So in other words, they both became drug rich right at the same time after flying out to Atlanta and connecting with those guys. Now, like I said before, I'm pretty sure that Hood Rich and Drug Rich were kind of going through a falling out at the time, although once again, I'm not a gang scholar, so maybe I'm wrong about that. However, there actually is a video from way back in 2019 where RXK Nephew is in Atlanta talking about how he's the real Drug Rich, listening to Hood Rich Pablo Juan and basically saying that he's making connections with people all over the country. Somebody in the comments would then point out that he was fucking with Juan, but then after that, he ended up making a diss track on him, with Nephew responding by saying he used to fuck with me at the time, but nowadays we're not cool. So there was some sort of falling out there. Anyways, the whole point is that they ended up going out to Atlanta and connecting to some form of Drug Rich, with them taking on the name Drug Rich Nephew, which of course relates to the gang and the fact that whenever he was on the block, people would call him Nephew, and of course Drug Rich Poppy, which is pretty similar. Soon after arriving there, Poppy would then drop a track on an unnamed YouTube channel, which was called Channel Number 9, which would go on to get 2,000 views in a day, which was more than they ever seen before that point. And this is really when the two of them started to go crazy with dropping music, with Nephew putting out his first publicly available mixtape, which was called Respect My Drug Rich, which was produced by a guy going by the name of Hood Rich Plug. Only a month after that, he ends up putting out another project called Schizophrenia with several different features from Poppy. A couple days after that, he then drops his next project, which was called Rich Nephew. Now, all of these projects were dropped under the Drug Rich name, with them all being produced by that Plug Rich guy, meaning that they were probably still in Atlanta during the time that all of this was going on. Only 2 days after that project, he put out another one called Poppy Myers Nephew Leatherface, and then a few days after that, he comes up with another one called White Room. Only a couple days after that, he ends up dropping a project called Slitherman, which is basically a different persona that he takes on when making certain songs. He based it off a character from Men in Black back when he used to like Will Smith, although after all that shit went down with his wife cucking him, he started to hate Will Smith. But either way, that is where the Slitherman persona came from, and once he started using it, it would become very popular with his existing fan base.
Give me sugar. In water.
Slitherman. Walk down and grab you. Climb through the window, break in and stab you.
Not long after that, he ends up putting out a project called RXK Nephew, and this is most likely when they ended up leaving Atlanta, with them forming up their own collective known as RX, basically being a runoff of Drug Rich, but only being comprised of a couple members, including RX Peso, RX Brainstorm, RX Poppy, and RX Nephew, with Peso basically falling out with Hector, moving over to New York, and starting his own collective there, which would eventually lead to beef between the two of them, as Hector would eventually catch word that Poppy was a snitch, and he didn't like the fact that Peso was running off with the group that they created together, with him hanging out with people who he considered a rat, although all of this wouldn't really boil over until around 2020.
Selling their ass, nigga keep giving y'all nigga chain, y'all niggas selling y'all chains and shit. Like y'all nigga gay, bro. I'm cool on all that, bro. I don't wanna be none of y'all nigga partner, bro. I ain't trying to be cool with none of y'all nigga, bro. Y'all nigga keep selling y'all jewelry. Nigga keep giving y'all nigga jewelry, y'all selling y'all chains. Drug Rich chain, niggas selling them. RX chain, niggas selling them. Talking about they doing insurance fraud. Come on, bro. Rich Poppy's a rat. You hanging with this nigga. Y'all nigga on Instagram promoting this nigga music. This nigga a police, man. What are y'all doing? What part of the street this is, man? Y'all niggas ain't finna assassinate my character and none of that clown ass shit y'all got going on, bro. Straight up, man. Oh man, y'all niggas some real hoes, man. Nigga done put too much into this shit, bro, to let y'all nigga assassinate a nigga character like this, man. That shit goofy as hell, bro. Some real nigga shit, bro. Nigga ain't about to keep sitting around letting that shit go. And nigga know what I be on, bro. So all that fake nigga got them talking about this and that, nigga know what I be on, bro. You feel me?
After that, Nephew would go on to drop 5 more projects and probably about 1,000 songs, with him often getting drunk off a Hennessy, hopping in the booth and saying whatever was on his mind, and well, that was really working out for him, because despite the fact that he didn't have a big song at this point or anything that was really going viral, all the consistency was definitely starting to get people on board. Now, when it comes to his 2020 output, I would say the most important projects from this year were Crack Therapy 1 and 2, as well as Oh Shit, There Goes Neff and Pop, which of course was a collaboration project between, well, RX Poppy and RX Nephew. Sorry, the project is called Oh Shit, That Neff and Pop, There They Go Again. I said it wrong the first time. Disregard my entire video. Holy shit, I do no research. Anyways, soon after that, November 2020, Poppy would end up putting out a track called Crazy Story, which was the first one that would go on to gain any sort of attention on the wider internet, gaining 40k views in only a couple of days, and after that, they were off to the races. But now that Poppy was finally starting to pop off in a big way, of course, everybody around him was feeling a certain type of way, so they would start to talk shit about him on a pretty regular basis, with the snitch allegations coming to light once again. I believe this all kicked off when their producer, Hoodrich Plug, would end up making a video where he talked shit about Poppy, calling him a snitch and saying that he never paid for beats. I'll show you the video right here.
Man, niggas been taking his chains. Man, niggas took so many chains from YR. They took some real ones, some fake ones, some plastic ones. Goddamn. Chester scared of me. I saw him. He started crying. And all type of shit. Officer Fleech. Nigga hired me in his video with my money. Niggas pulling out $1 bills and shit. Talking about he big Mazda. Nigga, you never owned no Beamers like me. No Audis. You never drove through the city of the drop top with mad ops, nigga. Nigga went to jail for 1 day and came home with no bail, all type of shit. I said, hold on. She said he thought he was...
Yo, I woke up, all I know is no funny shit. That nigga Trey said, Fleech, we bail out game. The next day Trey said, yo, that nigga Fleech, tell out game. Oh, hell nah. Ain't you supposed to get extradited? I said, oh, hell nah.
Next thing you know, we seen his papers. Fuck the papers. I seen that nigga bust a right down Joseph Place in the police car. That's when I knew he was the real police. I said, is that why y'all driving the police car? Oh, hell nah.
After that, it would get back to RX Hector, who would then do a huge exposed video where he would show all the paperwork from 2018 and talk shit about everybody in the RX gang. Now, none of this probably would have mattered all that much if it wasn't for the fact that Poppy would also start to talk a lot of shit about Nephew at the time, saying that he basically robbed his house and stole a bunch of shit from him when they were hanging out, which could be possible, but at the same time, I don't know why you're taking it online and not confronting him face to face. Anyways, I'll show you the video right here.
Come on, bro, you on some boss type shit, bro. I let you in my crib and you steal from me.
Of course, that got Nephew super heated, and he ended up making a response video where he would talk about why they were beefing.
Oh, shit. He don't want to see me on, he don't want to see me win, so he gonna come to Instagram and tell niggas. That's crazy. Why can't I get my money? You don't want to see me get my money, bro? That's G shit. I didn't even want to do it. I didn't even want to say all this. I feel like a hoe saying it, but I got to respond back to the people, man. They asked me what happened. I'm telling y'all what happened. Poppy dissing me over his girl, RX Cinderella. You know the little short one, like a troll with no edges, like a trainee. She sell pussy. I met her, like I post a story right now. She was sharing my music and shit. Poppy be fucking all the fans. Any new fan we get, he gonna go to their shit. You know what I'm saying? But I usually go with him, make sure he good. You know what I'm saying? Because there be a lot of gangsters around. And he ain't gangster, bro. We just went to Albany, bro. These niggas basically ran him out of Albany, told him not to come back. They told him he was a rat. They told him mad shit, bro. He was scared. I had to go drive and go get the nigga. Y'all see me drive to Albany to go get him. But why is you doing?
Basically blaming Poppy's long-term girlfriend, RX Cinderella, for starting the beef in the first place. Now, I'm not really sure if he's implying that RX Cinderella was a fan who Poppy hooked up with, or that he was cheating on her by hooking up with their fans, but either way, this is what he said. Now, this RX Cinderella girl is actually a lot more important than you would probably initially think, as many people blame her for being the one who actually snitched back in 2018. Now, I'm not sure if people are confusing this with a later incident that took place in 2023, or if they think that she was the one who called the cops after the house got shot up, which I could honestly believe, and I could see where that would put Poppy in a bad situation, as after all, that's how he got caught with a gun. And while that's not the best thing to do to your man, at the same time, if you look at the paperwork, Poppy is the one who's actively talking in the interrogation room, so you can blame her for putting him in a bad situation, but he is the one who decided to snitch. Keep in mind, I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. I mean, I don't really give a shit about snitching. If somebody shot my house up, you best believe I'm gonna call the police, but I'm a suburban person and he's supposedly a gang member, so you're not supposed to tell. But anyways, if all of this wasn't bad enough for Poppy, he would also get Nephew to drop an entire diss track on him. Now this track is called Carbon Roscoe, aka Chester Roscoe Cheetos, and let me tell you, this is how you do a real diss track, because it's an 8-minute long song where he absolutely tears into Poppy in every single part of his career. In fact, people have even made entire videos describing every diss that he dropped, and he's not just saying dumb shit like, oh, you're gay, you're lame. He's actually talking about real shit that happened to Poppy, or things that Poppy wouldn't want out in the open air, and really going in on them. I'll describe a couple here. First of all, he said that Poppy actually faked a limp to avoid people beating him up whenever he was in a rough situation.
That nigga 2016, I was about to punch him in his face. He like, nah, I came here to see Slither hurt. He like, I don't want to fight because my leg hurt.
Niggas was calling you that in jail because you told me you was faking a limp. What are you talking about? You faking a limp? So niggas don't beat you up? So niggas don't try to fight you?
On top of that, he also said that he was a set hopper, claiming both Blood, Crip, and GD at different points in his life. And there's actually proof of that, because in a couple different songs, you can see him claiming many different sets, before then going on to say that he's not a gang member at all anymore. But either way, you can't switch from that many gangs in the course of a year. In fact, you're not supposed to set hop at all.
Gang banging. You was GD, Crip, and Blood. As soon as I found out you was a dub. No, it's not getting swept under the rug.
Blood gang, slime gang, bitch, I'm still gang in your lane. Blood gang, nigga, that's the shit I claim.
Bitch, I'm bull.
Notice I don't talk about too much Crip shit. Everybody already know I'm Crip.
Bitch, I'm doing Crip like OT. I'm more Crip than Snoop D or Double G.
He also, of course, goes in on RX Cinderella, saying that she looks like a transgender and a guy named Lester.
Put my dick in your bitch throat. That bitch so ugly, can't do OnlyFans. She sell pussy, I shoot in the head. That bitch look like a trainee. That bitch look like a nigga named Stanley. That bitch look like Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali. She look like all them niggas.
Before then talking about Poppy's dead op, saying that he beat the shit out of him and choked him out before he died.
Swear to God, I robbed BK. Where did my mama I rob BK? Where did my mama choke BK the fuck out? He was bleeding out his eyes, where's my kids? Where did my mama choke Poppy out? I did his ass just like BK.
And probably the worst line out of all of them is when he talks about how Poppy was fucking with 17-year-old girls when he was 24.
24 fucking bitches, 17. Only teen I fuck with is my Glock 19.
And if that's actually a true statement, then holy shit, man, that is a pretty big reveal. But nothing really came from it, at least not at the time. And after that, the two of them were definitely not on good terms for a good while. And this is when RX Nephew would finally change his name to RXK, which stands for RX Killer.
Nothing else, nigga. RXK, nigga. I don't want to hear none of them good raps. I don't want to hear how good you put them words together.
Soon after he made that change, he would drop his project Crack Therapy 3, which included his first viral song, which was called American Terrorist. Now, once again, this track is absolutely crazy, being 8 minutes of him talking about the Bible and Jesus and conspiracy theories and Joe Biden and Donald Trump and basically everything that you could ever think of. All of the stuff that people think about on a daily basis said out loud on a track. And there were even videos of people analyzing the track and talking about just how much it meant to the modern culture, including this one guy who looked like a Harvard professor talking about just how smart Nephew really was and how he was speaking to the lost generation or something. I don't really know, but either way, he was definitely glazing. This would eventually lead to the track being picked up by Pitchfork, with them calling it the 44th best song in 2021, even though it came out in 2020. After that, Pitchfork basically had a love affair with him, reviewing a bunch of his projects, and while some of them they would crap on pretty heavily, they also seemed to just really enjoy his music, describing him as a once-in-a-lifetime artist. And at this point, Nephew was definitely quite a bit bigger than Poppy. Basically, they both started off around the same time. Poppy got bigger at first, Nephew then surpassed them, but by the end of the year, Poppy would once again surpass Nephew. Now at this point, Nephew was finally able to live out his dreams of hopping in his car and driving from city to city, doing features with anybody who wanted to make a song, as well as having several different producers reaching out to him on Instagram, with him eventually getting them to pay him a couple dollars to hop on their beat, and that would make him a ton of money as well. He was making money off of DistroKid, he was making money off of features, and now he was making money off of beat placements. That's multiple revenue sources, baby. That gets me hyped. During the year of 2021, he would drop over 1,000 songs and multiple different projects, and you would think during all of this time, him and Poppy wouldn't be on good terms, but surprisingly, only a couple months after that initial diss track, they would start making music together again. In May, Nephew would drop his Slitherman Activated tape, which is one of his most beloved projects of all time, and of course, it had a bunch of features from Poppy. Now, he would go on to say that the two of them were brothers, and while they had their falling out, it didn't mean that they didn't have love for each other. While some fans would speculate that the only reason that they got cool again was because they got more views and made more money when they were working together, which could be the case, but honestly, I think they were on actual good terms at the time. I mean, I would never forgive somebody for making up false allegations about me, but I guess if Adam 22 can forgive Lil Pump for saying that he was f***ing 16-year-olds when they were on tour together, I guess anybody can forgive anybody. After that, in July, Nephew would end up going on the No Jumper podcast, although unfortunately Poppy wasn't able to make it. Apparently he was dealing with some sort of legal problem. Maybe he wasn't able to fly out to LA because he was on parole, but either way, Nephew would do a very good interview, and honestly one of the best No Jumper interviews in the past decade. It was also during this interview that he would make fun of Lil Reese once again. He had previously put out a song called The Real Lil Reese where he would talk about him pooping his pants, but he would double down on that, as well as implying that Chief Keef has autism and that if they were together in the sped room, he'd probably bully him for always playing with his dreads, which is a crazy thing to say about one of the GOATs, but I mean, hey, you gotta respect him for saying it. And honestly, that's probably not even in the top 10 most disrespectful things he's ever said. In that very same interview, he would talk about just how much a goat Lil B is, while also implying that he has mental problems and fake dreads. So I guess he loves people, but he also isn't afraid to tell them how he feels. Adam 22 would also ask him if he ever got tried in real life before, and he would say that people actually found what he said very funny and knew that he wasn't being serious, and he got a lot more love than hate despite the fact that he was always talking shit. Soon after that, in November 2021, RX Poppy would get a massive opportunity when he was reached out to by a sad boy producer going by the name of Young Good, with the two of them working together on a project called Foreign Exchange, which had a track on it called 12 Stout Street, his most popular track to date and the first time that he truly went viral. It's kind of crazy to see Drain Gang work with a street dude, but either way, it was a pretty high profile collaboration, and it would really help to push RX Poppy's name in the wider underground, because of course the Drain Gang fandom is insane. I don't mean that in a bad way. I think they're pretty nice people. I hope so, at least. I've never really had any of them call me out or say any bad shit so far, but who knows, maybe someday I'll make a Blade video and they'll like burn my house down. We'll see. After that, in October, Poppy would end up getting arrested for another robbery, spending an entire year in prison and only coming out in late 2022. However, that wouldn't stop Nephew at all, and he would continue to drop music every single day all throughout the year, and by the time that he came out, he had already dropped like 3,000 to 4,000 songs in his entire career, probably even more than that. He also ended up returning to the No Jumper podcast in mid-2022, and it was even more entertaining than the first one. I know a lot of people really like to hate on Adam nowadays, and I completely get it. I know he's done a lot of crazy shit, but honestly, RXK Nephew has done a bunch of interviews on many different channels, and in my opinion, the no jumper ones are definitely the best. It seems that oftentimes the host can't keep him on topic and he'll talk about a bunch of random shit, which I do admit is funny, but that's not really an interview, that's more so a podcast. I've seen a bunch of people in the comments complaining that Adam doesn't really know how to talk to Nephew, and because of that, it was a very boring podcast. But if you're looking to see Nephew get drunk and start talking shit and saying a bunch of random shit that doesn't make sense, there's a million different interviews that all have that same thing right there for you to watch at any moment. I appreciate that Adam can actually keep people cohesive in his interviews, the same way as DJ Vlad can. A lot of people hate on them because they think that they're like informants or that they're trying to get people in trouble, but most podcasters simply start somebody off and then just let them talk and talk and talk. And when it comes to an interview, you want to get those interesting bits. You want to know about the lore, you want to know about the backstory. And if they're simply talking about how they got milk at the store and then they pissed on the ground and then ate a cockroach, it's like, okay, dude, that's interesting, I get it, but I mean, that's a conversation I'd want to have with you one-on-one, not something I'd want to watch. I know I'm a broken record, but people do terrible interviews in the underground. We gotta fix that. We gotta fucking fix that. After that, in October 2022, he would end up dropping a track with both Christ Dillinger as well as Brandon Buckingham, which was actually a diss at Sneeko, Andrew Callahan, and Danny Duncan. And while longtime viewers of the channel know that I don't really like Brandon Buckingham, I have to admit that this track definitely got both Christ Dillinger and Nephew a lot more attention. I mean, Christ had already done a diss track with Sam Hyde that got him kind of poppin', but RXK Nephew had never really gotten this type of attention from the wider YouTube audience, so I have to give Brandon props for that. Although, I mean, come on, man, you're really gonna diss Andrew Callahan because he does the same type of content as you, but he does it way better. And yes, I know people are gonna bring up his allegations, but I mean, Brandon has allegations too. Everybody's got fucking allegations. I don't know, man. Channel 5 is an inspiration, and I don't think I'd watch a Brandon Buckingham video if somebody had a gun to my head. That's just me, but I mean, yeah, being biased here, so let's move on. Soon after that, RXK Nephew would start to do more work with Christ Dillinger and Acid Soulja, doing a bunch of different shows with them. This is also right around the time that RX Poppy would get out of prison, with him immediately hopping on the radar and doing a first hour out freestyle, which was definitely a good move and got a lot of people back on his movement. However, this guy just simply can't stay out of trouble and would once again get caught up for allegedly putting hands on his girl. Now, some people think this isn't true and she simply got mad at him because he was cheating on her, but either way, it would get him in trouble with the law and put a couple more bad allegations on his name. And Nephew would actually kind of defend Poppy here. He wouldn't try to disprove the allegations or anything like that, but he would simply say that if that's your man, you got to stand down with them no matter what, which is a mentality that I heavily disagree with, but I mean, I kind of get it. I'm going to take two guys who are in the streets together a lot more seriously when they say that their bond is that deep, because they've probably done crime together, and I kind of understand why they would have loyalty, as opposed to some random internet rapper still wanting to work with somebody who has terrible allegations because, well, they simply want some clout. I'm not saying that Nephew is wrong or right for this. Personally, I disagree, but I mean, it's not my life. I can't really tell him how to think and feel. Anyways, after that in 2023, Nephew would start to move into this whole new style, which was a lot more adjacent to dance music and stuff from the 80s, which I really heavily fuck with. In fact, my favorite music from both him and Christ Dillinger is definitely the synth pop type of stuff. Now, people were hating on him heavily when he first started to dabble with this type of music, but honestly, I'm really glad that he stuck it out and continued to do that, because he did eventually find his footing, and now in my opinion, he's making the best music that he's ever made. In fact, Nephew's biggest song on Spotify actually comes from a dance project that he dropped in 2023 called Till I'm Dead, with the song being known as Critical, and honestly, can't lie, it's really good, and it has almost 7 million streams because it's so good.
Stepped in like, hey, my name Nephew. Came with good grades, baby, I bless you. Big ass two-tone Glock, I can't wrestle. Beat his way till I'm dead since I met you.
After that, in 2024, he would end up making a project with Christ Dillinger called This Album Is Terrorism. Once again, an amazing project. Honestly, the two of them are really carrying the rap game right now. I fuck with both of them heavily. It was also around that time that he would let his fans know that he was going to try to cut back on all the drugs and Hennessy that he was drinking. Apparently, he was doing e-pills all throughout his early career, but would eventually cut back on those. But the Hennessy was getting worse and worse, with him being a full-blown alcoholic. He did end up going to rehab in early 2024, and while it doesn't seem that he was able to cut out the alcohol altogether, he definitely drinks a lot less than he did in the past. At least from what I can tell, he no longer gets blackout drunk on interviews, except for maybe that Goblin one, although he definitely was pretty apprehensive to drink at first and was definitely taking it slow. But I mean, the guy still likes to party, but for the most part, he's not getting blackout drunk every single day of his life anymore, which is a nice thing to see because we don't want him to die at a young age. And yes, I know the guy is 30. A lot of people are going to say he's not young anymore, but 30 is still very young. I don't know why people think you just drop dead at the age of 30 and you can't do anything anymore besides start a family and just, I don't know, fucking mow your lawn. Nephew has a whole family and he's still doing what he loves, which is really the American dream, I'm not gonna lie. Soon after he got out of rehab, he would start to promote his new label called Crack Rock Records. Now, before this point, he had worked with another label that RXK Poppy started, although it kind of seems like they were starting to fall out at this point. There were a couple more features from the two of them as the years went on, but it seems like at some point in late 2024 and early 2025, they may have had a falling out. Once again, going back to that RX Brainstorm AMA, he would go on to say that him and Poppy weren't cool, and considering the fact that he's the main producer for RXK Nephew, there's a good chance that they might be on bad terms once again. Nobody knows for sure, but they definitely unfollowed each other on Instagram before RX Poppy's entire page was taken down. I'm not sure if that really means anything. I mean, I unfollow people all the time and it's not personal. I just simply, I don't know, don't want to see a million different things on Instagram when I'm on there, but considering the fact that they were friends for so long and actively worked together, it may have been personal, but who knows. In the middle of 2024, Nephew drops one of the greatest tracks of all time with Christ Dillinger, produced by DJ Smokey. The track's called I'm Back, and if you haven't listened to it, definitely give it a listen. Holy fuck, this song is good. I need more people to make that disco type music. You guys are asking what the next trend is going to be after Rage. I really hope it's disco, because holy fuck, people are making some great stuff over there, but don't water it down too much. In early 2025, Nephew would once again end up collaborating with Brandon Buckingham to diss DJ Academic, so you guys already know my opinion on that, but honestly, I mean, RXK Nephew's getting the bag, so I can't blame him for that, and well, Brandon's doing his thing, I guess. And it wasn't long after that that Nephew actually ended up buying a house in Atlanta, which he describes as a content house where he streams video games, he makes music, he hangs out with his producers, and then after he's done, he goes home to his family. And at this point, I don't think it's out of the question to think that he's making some really good independent money. I mean, yes, he does have some sort of deal with Empire Records, although he's not signed into an actual deal with them. It's more so a distribution deal where they end up putting his music out for him and promote it a little bit, but they don't have any say over what he does and when he drops, and because of that, he still has full freedom to do whatever he wants. He's living the modern day underground rapper dream, making money, doing what he wants, dropping music, getting drunk, and just simply having fun with his life. And to people who think that this can't happen in the modern day and that the underground is dead and the music industry has control over everything, well, here's an example, in fact, multiple examples of people who make it work. Once again, Nephew is an example of somebody who stays consistent, they continue to drop music, they continue to feed their fans, they don't let anything stop them, anything slow them down, they say whatever they want, whatever's on their mind, and because of that, people truly connect to them. And honestly, you gotta respect it. For everybody saying that I never show love to RXK Nephew, he's been one of my favorite rappers for the longest time, and I'm glad I finally got a chance to tell his full story, or at least to the best of my ability. Once again, if I messed anything up when talking about all the gangs, make sure to let me know in the comments below. I'm one man, I'm not from America, I don't care about gang culture, but I'm actually very interested to hear about this and kind of want to look even deeper into Hood Rich Pablo Juan. According to a lot of people, he's the architect of the modern day rap game, so honestly, kind of gotta look into him. But as you already know, the next one will probably be RX Poppy. We gotta go deeper into that. If you guys want to see that, make sure to let me know in the comments below. Make sure to let me know everything you want to let me know. If you made it to the end of the video, make sure to leave some knife emojis in the comments below. Shout out to Knife Gang and Delete This Gang. Leave Delete This in the comments below as well. And with all of that said, shout out to RXK Nephew because he proves to everybody that if you want it to work, it truly can work. And honestly, he's an inspiration for that one. Also, all of you motherfuckers with the ChatGPT thing, if ChatGPT can really write a script like this and then actually record it for me, then let me know, because holy shit, I've been researching this shit for a week. It's been very confusing. There's so many different details. I've been in the hole. I've been in the research hole, the K-hole, you could even say. Anyways, shout out to Adam Killer, shout out to Obama, shout out to motherfucking Skipso Jackson. I don't know who the fuck that is. Anyways, peace out. Bye. See you in the next one.